I think we have a very special program today. Our tagline for Chicago Hyde Park Village is Neighbors Helping Neighbors. But some of our members have personally expanded that motto and have reached out to help neighbors beyond our borders, even beyond our oceans. Today, Mary Naftzger, Ismael Turay, Josie Disterhoft will take us to villages in three very different parts of the world. As you will see very shortly on the map that I think, mm, there, yeah. So you see, we have Guatemala, Guinea on the west coast of Africa, and the Philippines in the Pacific Ocean. And a very special thanks to Sylvia Dawson, whose skill and technical expertise has helped us capture the images from these distant lands and work with our neighbors and the work that our villagers are doing with neighbors there. We hope that this might be the first of programs about Hyde Park Villagers' connections and outreach to other areas of the world. If any of you or your friends would like to share your stories of the goodwill and collaborative efforts in different places, do let us know, and we will continue our explorations of neighbors helping neighbors near and far. And now I turn this over to Mary Naftzger, who will take us to Guatemala.
Before you do that, can I make another additional information? So each person who's presenting today has given permission to have their email out, as well as the organization to which they worked. And we will post those in the next Hyde Park Village e-blast newsletter. And if you want to make contact with them or explore that organization that they worked with, you can do that.
Thank you, Terry. And now, Mary?
Mary, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Thanks very much, Susan. This is indeed a stimulating presentation today with the three of us from very different parts of the world. This is a great picture of the highlands of Guatemala, where the village that I've been going to, Saka, is located. This is in the north of the country. I'll show you a map in a minute. But we're connected to this village through a university church partnership, because the man who grew up in that village and who fled after it was burned to the ground by the government and the military, fled here to the US and became a member of the university church community in Sanctuary. So we knew him, and this project has started the day that he talked about going back to his village with his friends from Hyde Park. Next.
Oops, wrong way.
As many of you may know, Guatemala is the first Central American country south of Mexico, so it is a large border with Mexico. Then to its south, southeast, essentially, Honduras and El Salvador come along, and then the rest of the Central American area. So here is Saka, the village in the highlands. You can see the brown on this topographical map. All these are peaks, or at least highlands, versus the hot and humid tropical lands on the coast and in the north. It's just to get you into the country of Guatemala. It's really important to know that 2/3 of the population is indigenous out of a population of 18 million. This is the highest percentage of any of either Mexico or any of the Central American countries. And therefore the history of the indigenous people there is significant and both sad but interesting. There are 22 different Mayan languages, although Spanish is the official language. Next. Unfortunately, we need to start with some of the stark facts about the Guatemalan Civil War, because it had a complete influence on the indigenous villages. And we're focusing in on Saka, where Virgilio comes from, certainly a significant influence there. So the difficulties certainly didn't start in 1954, but this is where we're starting, where President Arbenz was overthrown by the CIA. And ever since that time, our government has been supporting various brutal regimes. And this is what caused the Civil War, because of course there was opposition from the people, particularly the indigenous people who were being oppressed. During the 40 years of the war, 200,000 people, mostly indigenous, were killed or massacred, with 1 million people, mostly indigenous, as refugees. And that's the time that Virgilio Vicente was being pursued by this policy of the president. It was called a scorched earth policy, and 640 villages, including Saka, were burned to the ground, and the people massacred or fled. It's really pretty unbelievable. So Virgilio, among thousands of others, escaped with his family and eventually got up here to Hyde Park and was taken into sanctuary. Of course, he had no visa. We've got quite a system that people fleeing from that Holocaust essentially were not allowed in. But in 96, finally, the peace accords were signed, and little by little, people began to settle in that village. Next. The children are so influenced by what their parents and their grandparents went through that one of our delegation members, Andy Carter, whom some of you know, was able to write a book mostly in Spanish and Quiche, which is here, about some of the history of that village. Most of it was positive history, but it had to include when their village was burned and what that was like, so that they knew what had happened. You can see, well, it's hard to see that there's soldiers in the background. These are drawings that the children in the village made after hearing the story. And then the second thing that is cited here is that then those who were able to escape hid in the village, in the jungle, and many of the families we have gotten to know were in the jungle. Next. So the person around whom all this partnership was built was Virgilio Vicente. He had been living here in Chicago, as I've said, ever since the family came in 86. And getting to know him was a real privilege. He visited the few people that had come back to Saka to rebuild, to see just how he and his church up here could be of help. So the first delegation that we went on was the year 2000. And by that time, money had been raised for the first of the projects that the village told Virgilio they needed. So in the beginning, we were funding and sending the money down before we went, funding infrastructure projects. Sylvia, next. It was really exciting when the water in a spring way up above the village was harnessed. Trenches dug by all the community members so that water actually came out of a tap right by each of their houses. Next, Sylvia. The second most important project was to help the families with the grinding of corn, which, as you can imagine, is a basic, a staple for tortillas and other dishes. So we funded this engineering, this motor in a little protective hut, so that the women periodically could go and grind their corn. Previously, they'd spent part of the day and kept their girls home to help with the grinding of the corn by hand. Next. As we moved along with our relationship, we of course got involved in the school that a Spanish not-for-profit organization had sponsored. It was really an incredible gift. The villagers built the school, but with an architecture plan and the money from Spain. It's been a great community resource, not only for the students whose classrooms are around the outside in a U-shape, but also for the village because there's a large indoor covered space. So from activities with us to this special Mayan religious ceremony, which was held during the second year anniversary of the operating of the school, we felt very privileged to be part of that gathering. Next. Although we did not need to help build the school, we did help with scholarships, and we have continued to do that to this day. This is actually the advanced students, because it's such a great picture. We intercepted them down in the big town where the high school is located. And we had already, again, we'd sent the money each year to help with their payments. You can see one of these wonderful thank you notes, which we got every year. And this is from Felipe, who later became one of the teachers in the primary school. I love the lighting of the way that these students have done for their village and Felipe's concept of the light. Next. Of course, we had various activities. First, we'd go around to see what projects they had put into place from the financing that we sent. But we had plenty of time to have fun with the kids. And the women actually also enjoyed this card weaving activity. You can make little purses, little bags out of it. So here are a couple of our members interacting with these girls and boys. It was quite popular. Next. Another time we met with the young people in the school, this is, as I had showed before, the school's community space. So here's my husband, Bob, and myself, and Linda, who's the good craft and weaving person. And Paulino is one of the members of the community who really loved craft projects. And you may be able to see this group of women in the back right corner who had a chance to come and get together and socialize while we were working with their children. This was really a boon, and we began to realize that we should do that as often as we could. Next. It was most interesting to see how the community developed around making plans for their village, and for how they decided on projects that they wanted us to fund. It didn't take too long for us to realize that the women were not involved formally in that process of decision making. And we tried not to impose our views on the village, but we began to get to know the women, and they had all kinds of ideas, of course. And Herman, who was definitely the community leader, really warmed to the idea of having a meeting with the women. So that's what happened a number of times, and we would get proposals that had been approved by all the women, for us to consider how much funding we had and how much we could fund. Next. We, of course, had various informal times with the leadership. This is Herman again, and Guadalupe, who is Virgilio Vicente's brother, also an influential elder in the community. But you can see we're just kind of sitting around, two of our members, and letting Herman and Guadalupe tell us what's going on with their decision making, with the dissension sometimes, what was in the offing for the next few years that the village needed. And we realized that what had developed was first infrastructure, and then more informally some projects to support their agriculture. Their income is subsistence agriculture, taking their product to the market, and then moving on to the school. So we were following, of course, their lead as to what the priorities were. Next. You missed one, Sylvia. The women. Great. Yes, I wanted to just give you a few everyday scenes, although essentially this wasn't every day because the women had to get together when we were there to do enough cooking to take care of our delegation and, of course, to feed their own families at the same time. And what was delightful is that the women had such a good time getting together. The work they have to do is so onerous, and they're in their own kitchens and homes all day long. Here they get together and can chat while they're making tamales with the leaves that grow right in their own community. It's called machan, different from any other country or other part of Guatemala. Next. And we wanted to show you one of the houses. Each person built their house by, not necessarily by themselves, but on their own with help from other community people. And here's Herman's home with his various children and his uncle. So visiting was really quite enjoyable. And you can see they have to share it with their corn so it's dried well enough so they can grind it for masa, for making tortillas. Next.
Mary, there's a question
Oh.
about what department or province is the village in Guatemala?
Oh,
For those
okay.
on audio only, can you spell the name of the village?
Sure. Whoops. Oh, yeah. Wait a minute. It's a Q. So in Quiche, it means clear water. Saka means clear water. So
Thank
it
you.
is in the department of Quiche. So this is my last picture, and this is a goodbye, clearly. Many of you will know Pat Wilcoxon, who was very committed to the village and worked hard. Unfortunately, she died just a couple of months ago, but she stuck it out on our visits to Guatemala, but needed a mule to bring her down. You can see that it was raining, and the steep path was so treacherous. We were down in the mud a good bit of the time, and that was not for Pat. We had the young people carrying our packs, so we were able to get down ourselves. But goodbye to Saka, and the visits will continue as soon as it is safe to return. So it will have been 21 years since the partnership was started. Thank you very much. And let me now move you on to Ismael.
Bravo.
Thank you. Hello, Ismael.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ismael Turay, native of Guinea, Conakry. I say Guinea, Conakry because there's so many Guinea. We got to add the capital name to each one to identify it. After 30 years, I went back home to visit, not really to build a house. So my kids would know their roots because my kids were all born here. And I thought about building a house over there for them. We forced them to go visit and see where they come from. And that's when, that's what I met. Okay, this is Guinea, population, let's say 20 million. And the area is 94.926 square meter. Right off of the Atlantic Ocean. It's beautiful view. We only have 2 seasons over there, the rainy season and the dry seasons. If I had the money this time, I'll be living here, going over there because that's their dry season started now. The official language is French because the country was colonized by the French. But we do have 4 major languages also. The Susu, I am the Susu, that's one is spoken in the Low Guinea, by the coastal, they call it Low Guinea, by the Atlantic Ocean. Then you have the Middle Guinea, that's the mountains. And then you have Upper Guinea, also plain, and then you have the Forest Guinea that is lower. And Guinea is surrounded by Guinea-Bissau, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Ivory Coast, Senegal, and Mali. And the poverty rate is really high. It's not the country is poor, no. The country is very rich. Unfortunately, it's run by incompetent people. It has one of the largest, they say, at a quarter of the world deposit of bauxite is there. Aluminum, iron ore, diamond, gold, all there. Just run by people who don't care too much about the rest of the populations. The people mostly live on agriculture. And next, please. Next. Okay. This is a part of where my house is. The Atlantic Ocean, that's a branch of the Atlantic Ocean, is right behind. Now, go back. Okay. You see those? Okay. Yeah, that's fine there. The ocean is just behind the trees. Those are mangrove trees. Mangrove trees, mangrove grows in the ocean itself. The fish, that's what they do their eggs and things like that. It's beautiful to see. And on the right, left-hand side here, that's the palm trees. I know you have heard about palm oil and things like that come from that. And here, the palm, where the mangroves are, this is a low tide right now. The high tide, you see ocean water, salt water all over here.
Oh,
So I usually go over there just to see and then watch. See the little crabs. You can see them on the thing. They're very tiny crabs. And the villagers live on that one. They catch them and they cook them and all kind of way. Next, please. And to just let you know, mangrove is a tree that is used for to make charcoal. Exactly, that's what we see here. That's the preparation of the charcoal, wood charcoal. They cut trees and they make a charcoal out of it. And that's also have an effect on the country because they're cutting trees down. Deforestation, they call it. The government is trying to fight that, but people are poor. They have to get things, they cut trees and they make a charcoal out of it and sell it to the market. And the gentleman standing over there is one of them. You ask them, they say, well, why you do that? You destroying you. They say, well, we got to find something to live on. So this he got 2 bags of charcoal here ready to go to the market to sell it. Next, please.
what happened to Hades Mountains. Forests,
Next, please.
making charcoal.
There's a little bit of a delay.
Oh, yeah.
There.
Okay. This rainy season time, you see all the fruits we have, all kind of fruits. Mangoes is mostly, now go back, please. Okay, this side, this is the ocean, this is a low tide. Okay. Those are the mango, the fruit, all the fruits we have over there. You got banana, mangoes, potatoes, you name it. It's all there. Watermelon, all that. It's all there. And the right hand side here, you see the people selling mangoes on the side of the trees. Rainy season, mangoes are everywhere. If you don't want to go into the wood to get it, then you have to spend the money to buy it. Those people go in the wood, yes. Those people go in the wood and get all the mangoes and come and sell it on the side. People pass in the car to stop and purchase it. But the rainy season, you have all that. All kind of foods, rice, you name it. You have it.
Next.
They can, next. This is a mango tree. I don't know if you can see the mangoes here. It's full of mango. That's all the red spots you see there, those are mangoes. You just come, you just come over and get them.
Dry them.
And they dry them too. They dry them right under the sun on the rock by the ocean. And they dry them there. Those are dry mangoes. It's dry naturally, not the fire, just a sun dry. So they keep those things for summertime when there is no food. They cook it and make all kind of things out of it. Next. And this one is more technology is needed to help them to dry the mangoes. If we have that over there, they won't be hungry because with all those mangoes, sometimes they spoil. They can be picked and then dry them and save them for later on. But there's no technology for that. Okay, again, this is at a low tide. This is my favorite place to walk. I walk here and go all over. It's beautiful. You see those little crabs, birds, and all kinds. I go and sit over there when it's very hot. Got a breeze from the ocean, and my house is right next to it, very close.
Next.
Next. Okay, those are the fishermen and their boats. The problem with them, they catch a lot of fish because the Atlantic Ocean is full of fish. And the interior of the country, they don't have it. And those people have a hard time transporting that because they lack equipment like refrigerator trucks. So a lot of time when they get fish, a local come and buy from them and they smoke it to sell it to the market. But interior of the country, the lack of that, there is no fish, there is no ocean over there. So with the refrigerator truck, they can transport those things from there to the interior. Next. Okay, this is one of the birds we have over there. Guinea fowl, they call name of the Guinea fowl. They're beautiful, yeah. Yeah, I think these almost are in Africa. I don't know if it's every country or what, but it's a lot of. We have a lot in Guinea. They're beautiful. There's some people domesticate those, and you can find them in the backyard. And the good food too. They're like turkey, but the turkey is bigger. It's beautiful. They're feathers. People use the feathers to make things out of it. Next time I'll bring you some. Yeah. They're beautiful, yeah.
Next.
Next. This is my house in construction. This is a Baobab tree. Baobab tree is spiritual. It's well known in Africa, all over West Africa. It's a very spiritual. People come over, like the kids, they come over now with their wishes writing in the paper. They come over there to pray. Like these soldiers you see over there, standing over there, they come and say their prayers and things like that. It's a huge tree, very big, baobab. You go over and you tell the baobab your problem. People say it's solved. I heard people come over and take some prayers and then make a gift and leave it under the tree. Women come over there asking to have a baby. They make a donation and leave it over under the tree. I don't know. I've seen that the thing disappears. I don't know who's taking it. You make a donation, you leave it under the tree, and you come the next day, it's gone. So it's very, very spiritual. Next.
Oh,
That is, yeah. Next. That's my house. Once it's finished, you all can come visit.
Yeah.
You're all welcome there. Okay. Here, when I went to the school, the little school they have over there in the village, I saw the kids got into the classroom, no books, nothing in there. I said, my God, what is this? And I wanted to use the toilet. There was no toilet, you got to go in the wood. So I came back here, I was talking to a friend, one of the member of the village. And then she said, oh, she's a French. She and her husband used to be here, but they moved to New York now. So what I was there, she sent me money, so $75 a year to help the school. So I took that money and gave it to them. We went and bought cement, and then we built a toilet for them. 3 toilets. 2 for the kids, boys and girls, and 1 for the teachers. We're able to build that. You will see that in the letter. It might be somewhere there. And here, that's it. They say on the left-hand side, that's when I presented the money. The villagers, that's the imam of the village is speaking, praying. So everybody came that day, the villagers, the parents, the students, performed and all that. So they were so happy to have that money. And then to see the toilet, they were dancing, they were so happy. They no longer have to go in the wood. They have a nice toilet. It's really sad when I promised them I'm going to take them books so we can start a library. They don't have it. I got a lot of French books here now. I have to find a way to take it back home. And whatever, people can get it, old computers, all that. They don't even have it. They don't have anything. It's a village. So I promised them we're going to start, we're going to build a technology room, books and then all computers so they can learn. The lack of everything. Last time I got some things from Irene, old telephone. I took it to the people, but oh, they were so happy.
Next.
Yeah, next. Okay, that's a school, and those are school children.
Next.
This is one of the army guy. He came, his mom from there, so he saw the condition of the village. Kids had to go miles and miles to the next school, so he built these things on his own pocket. He built it because he was sorry for kids going miles and miles. And when I'm there, all I'm doing is just transporting kids. When I'm on my way in from the main road to the inside, I see kids standing over there, Mr. Turay, they stop me. They call me American. Yeah, to
Next.
transport, so I transport them. So what I do before I get there, I usually stop at the market, buy food like bread and things like that. So when I pick them up, I say, okay, there's a bread in the back over there. You guys grab some.
Next.
Next.
I'm sorry about these delays. We haven't got that figured out yet.
Okay.
Don't want to go. There it goes. No,
Oops.
Yeah.
was that
You
your
went back.
last one?
You went back. Oh, no. No.
Well,
Okay, I think that's
One
my turn.
minute. Let me go back to here.
Yeah, my
Yeah,
turn
that was
is
the
over.
last one. Yeah, that was
Okay.
the last one.
Yeah, this is
so
the last
now
one.
we go to the Philippines with
So there
Josie
was one
Disterhoft.
question though, while Ismael was talking, what
Okay.
what organization were you working with there? I think you sort of indicated that you worked with some folks in Hyde Park, but could you elaborate on that?
Yes, I didn't really work with them. We were talking just like we're talking now, and then I saw some pictures about those kids and what I'm doing because I was collecting on old computers to take it them over there. So when I get there, they sent me $75. I put it in my account. So I took that seven. That's a lot of money over there. So we were able to build. I have the pictures here. We didn't have time to put all that in. Built a toilet for them. So now I'm collecting French books with the help of HPKCC. I got a lot of French books. I'm going to take it to them. We're going to start a library. And then if I got some old computers, I will take that too, because the lack of all that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. So
The
now,
name of the village is called Kobiam. Kobian. Kobiam. I do not know the meaning of it, but I'll send a message. Hopefully they will respond. Okay. Oh, he called me too.
and so now we move to the Philippines in the Pacific Ocean with Josie Disterhoft. And Josie, you may need to unmute yourself.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted.
Yes, that's
Okay,
good.
good morning. When I left the Philippines 66 years ago, there were 32 million people who lived there. And we were also known to be number 2 in Asia in terms of socioeconomic and educational achievements. But a few years ago, I was told that the Philippines was now competing to be the second poorest country in Asia. So that was quite a shock to me. And I started paying more attention to the Philippines again. I now work with an organization called Gawad Kalinga, which was an organization and movement that was invented, created in the Philippines, and that has sought partnerships with many countries and people all over. So we have a Gawad Kalinga USA as well. Next slide, please. That's Ishmael's. Yeah, we are now 110 million people, which is, if you compare it to the United States with 340 million, we're about a third of the population of the United States. And about 4.1 million of those are Filipinos. That's about 1% of the US population. And we live, or the Philippines has an area that's about 3/4 the size of California, but it's composed of 7,640 islands in three major groups: Luzon to the north, Visayas in the middle, and Mindanao, that we refer to as the mostly Muslim set of islands to the very south. We have a poverty rate of 20%, extreme poverty defined by the United Nations as families living on less than $1.25 a day. And the causes for poverty are usually listed as the fact that we are prone to natural disasters, earthquakes, typhoons, whatever. And then there's major corruption in the government. Just recently, the first Nobel Peace Prize awarded to a Filipina was given to a journalist who had been tracking the work of the current president, Duterte. And I think one of the things he's most famous for is his belief in extrajudicial killings. And today, counters say there are about 32,000 people who have been killed on suspicion of abuse of drugs, use and selling, although none of the wealthy people who may, well, it's the poor as usual who are usually killed in situations like that. There is interreligious strife, supposedly caused by differences between Muslims and Christians, although now it's probably more political than it is strictly religious. The Philippines has 87 different, they like to call it languages, which makes communication sometimes a little difficult. But about 30 years ago, somebody decided that we needed to have a national language, and that was Tagalog, is what it is now. Next slide, please. Gawad Kalinga works to alleviate homelessness and extreme poverty by building villages. Gawad Kalinga works with the local government units to get lists of people who are considered the poorest in the villages. And there's a series of tests that they have to go through to prove that they are really poor, but also to prove that they are worthy. They are, families who are applying are expected to give about 2,000 hours of work into the building of homes and villages. And in return, those who are awarded homes are given home security with land security for about 25 years, renewable, depending on various criteria. Um, Gawad Kalinga also facilitates livelihood projects, from teaching crafts, organizing pedicab for transportation. But one of our favorite things is to encourage and to fund families to do gardening of crops and fruit trees, and also to raise livestock. Apparently, a family agricultural project can alleviate about 75% of the food budget of a person. Um, there are families who have really gotten to this and others not. We also, to be holistic, we establish preschools and libraries. The libraries are both fixed and traveling. We call them the suitcase libraries. They travel from one barangay or village to the other. We try to provide nutrition, education, and health preventative education as well. Very important in all this is the training for self-governance, so that the villages themselves uh, can really manage their lives and make sure that they are progressing somewhat. And of course, we want them to work with the local government units. Ongoing values formation is considered important, and there are caretaker teams that are volunteers who try to help the growing villages. And really the core of that training is really for people to care about other people and to share with them. Um, we consider poverty not just like a paucity of resources, but also a lack of caring and sharing, which really made me think of the tagline of Chicago Hyde Park Village. And so GK not only gives families homes, they really restore a sense of dignity by even just having an address and the possibility of a livelihood, and then hope gets renewed. And we think this is a very important outcome. The picture here shows a family saying that things might still be hard, but they in fact are, are more hopeful now. Yeah. Next slide, please. John, my husband, and I started going to the Philippines in 2006. And to the left, you will see one of the first village that we actually built. And then the picture to the right is a neighboring village. The village site that we chose was on a hillside overlooking one of the mountains in the region which we considered to be totally beautiful. Um, so the first village we built was for 30 homes, and at that time, it cost no more than $50,000 for homes and community centers, etc. Needless to say, the price of construction uh, materials have gone up since then. but we were very proud of that first attempt. Yeah. Next slide, please. The first village we named Pachamama Village, which is Inca for Mother Earth. We thought we were very clever because we had just come from Peru and just adored, you know, the worship of Mother Earth. And so we thought it would be a very good name for the village. Of course, nobody in the Philippines knew what Pachamama is. So it was just something, again, when you forget about the culture of a place, you make mistakes like ours. Although the Pachamama village name was very attractive to people as investors. Okay. Next, please. The size of a home is no more than 275 square feet. And it's probably the size of our kitchens or a little smaller. And the word that came to mind of people to convince them that there is space in such a small abode is to use the word loftable, meaning when you got your act together and are able to afford it, you can build some sort of mezzanine for more sleeping space for people. At the time, we were told the average size of a Filipino family was 8 persons. So you could imagine 8 persons living here, and it could go as high, of course, as 11 to 12 people living in such space. But nonetheless, people were happy to have an address and some protection from. We decided also to paint the houses different colors, like the Painted Ladies of San Francisco, because it was our belief that the colorful houses gave people a little bit more sense of joyfulness and hope. Next, please. And these are more people living. You can see the scale of 2 of the volunteer workers in the context of a home. And then there's John pretending to help. The current village builds that we have now makes you really work and not just pose for pictures. Next, please. Village in progress. You can see rice being dried, palay being dried there. And then to the right is a picture of a favorite activity of people. We call it tambay, meaning standby. People just like to gather, and important decisions are made, with this kind of a setting. Next. The pandemic year. We normally, the US normally raises $2 million from very small donations, with large people. And we were surprised that there was still money going to the Philippines. I think it is because there were 3 super typhoons and 2 earthquakes. And when there is disaster like that, people are more willing to give. But the pandemic is dreadful, but people the last year and a half were more worried about hunger than they were of the pandemic, because not only did typhoons destroy crops, the transportation system from one place to the other across um, was prevented from really being successful by the kinds of precautions that an ill-informed government gave. So people were more worried about dying from hunger than they were of dying from the pandemic. But people from the established villages, the 3,000 or so, uh, went beyond their villages and shared meals. And then donations came so that you would see there were like 75 so-called community kitchens that were established, and um, they were all organized using volunteers, usually groups of women waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, starting to cook and serving, and they prioritize children up to 2,000 meals per child, per village from that kitchen. Um, in addition to that, whatever produce the people in the established villages had, they went outside their boundaries and established community kitchens, very much like we have here, that people who were hungry could take, and people who wanted to donate can just leave. So that was, pretty impressive to us. As I said, there were typhoons and earthquakes, but we were very pleased to realize that the GK villagers in the 3,000 villages went beyond and helped those outside of their boundaries. Next, please. And this is connecting back to the vision of Chicago Hyde Park Village. Whatever big social changes there are, I think, are sometimes best organized around very small units. And if it is social and humane, they start with little clusters of people being with one another, very much like the notion as well of Chicago Hyde Park Village. And this is one of our first trips as well. John and I could sit on the ground. We probably can sit on the ground now, but we may not be able to get up in our old age, right? Next. Is that the last one, Sylvia? Working with Gawad Kalinga gives me what they call one of those driving purposes necessary in old age to get you excited about living some more. I think sometimes I have 5 of those, and I think I call them my obsessions. But anyway, thank you.
I want to thank you, Josie and Mary and Ismael. I have learned so much this past hour that I never knew about Guatemala, Guinea, and the Philippines. And I love the idea of sharing and neighbors helping neighbors near and far. And maybe I hope others have connections too that they can share with us. So thank you very much.
So we could take 1 or 2 last questions. We're over time, but if there's any burning questions. And do you want to stop sharing your screen, Sylvia, so we can see everybody? Thank you. So anybody have any last questions for our presenters? Okay, well, I want to, Margaret, are you raising your hand? No.
I have so many questions, and it's wonderful and fascinating, and I've always been very curious as to what you're going about. I'm really interested partly in the economics, how much, you mentioned that, $75, you can build 3 toilets. Is that still really the case? Is that the scale? What are we talking about in terms of how much money does the church, the university church, contribute every year? How much are you raising, Ishmael, to take over there?
Yes, if I can respond to that. Yeah, I'm collecting French books now, 40K, because I don't have any books. When I went to the classroom, I look, nobody has any book.
We
The
have so
government is
many
not
books
giving
here.
anything. So,
There's
yeah,
so
I'm
many
collecting French. What do you say?
There
I
are
can't
so
hear you.
many excess books in Hyde Park. We're collecting them all in the
Yeah,
basement.
but it got to be French. That's the problem.
Oh,
It
I
has to
see.
be French. Yeah,
Well, that narrows it down a little bit, but
yeah, it has to be French. That will help a lot.
okay.
And the thing over there, they are doing the work. The labor cost is very low.
Okay.
It's very low. So whatever we have, we can do something with it. My thing is at first we're trying to help them build a library because they don't have it, and then computer room, they don't have it. Some of the student kids over there have never touched a computer. So if you
Well,
have any old laptop, you don't need a computer, telephone, I'll take all. They
if you
can be
had
used.
old computers, do you have somebody who can repair them, restore them? I mean,
Yes.
you got a whole lot of partially or rejected computers, but I
Yeah.
just, have you got anybody to make them come alive again?
Yes. Got people where they can fix it.
So, but as I understand it, Ismail, you like to take these things directly yourself to make sure that they get to the people.
Oh yes, that's what I do. I take it to myself. There is a shipping company here. I give it the shipping them, but I get over there, recoup, collect all of them and take it to the village myself. I don't like to give it to somebody. You know how you give it this person to do this and they do, but I take it myself. Last time the 3 telephones I got and the eyeglasses. And I was talking to this old lady. She was having a hard time to see. I said, put this on. She put it on, and then we tried 3, and she was dancing. She said, I can see, I can see.
Okay. You want
Yeah.
my own glasses?
So,
Whatever I can get, telephones, eyeglasses,
Okay.
computers, I'll take it.
and maybe Josie can talk about it. You do major fundraising with Gawad Kalinga every year.
Yeah, the U.S. is probably the biggest partner of GK Philippines. So, and here, I'm really quite surprised that I haven't asked you all for money. But at any rate,
I do.
We're waiting, Josie.
we have John and I think have lost major friends because all they could hear from me is, well, and anyway, we have all sorts of fundraisers. There are people who are able to raise money because they can dance and put on dances. I'm the only Filipino who wasn't gifted with a sense of rhythm or music, so I don't do that. I just really just ask. Sometimes, however, we feed people. We invite them for a merienda, and then but the best fundraiser I like is asking people to pledge for a specific thing. Like the last village that I had in Visayas was because of Typhoon Haiyan, and I wanted to raise like $100,000, but it ended up people joined, and so we were able to build 60 houses and provide livelihood, community center, and we raised about $350,000. Now I am going to Mindanao, where the Muslim Christian uh, strife makes people crazy. It's also really actually the prettiest part of the Philippines. And by the way, I forgot to mention, the Philippines, this is an aside, has some of the best beaches and resorts in the world. Susan knows that because her daughter goes to it. Yeah, but it's extraordinary that sometimes you can have these privileges for people who can afford and not. But how else? I mainly ask. I don't. Many other Filipinos do extraordinary things, but I don't do extraordinary things. So I just ask.
So
Yeah.
we will be hearing from Josie in the future.
No, I promise not to do that to this group, right?
Well,
So,
You,
but Mary,
you need to take all of us over there.
yeah. So, but Mary, also through for your project, is it all through University Church or because I never have heard about it really?
Yes, it is strictly through University Church, but I'm actually not a member. I'm a member of another church. But I just became so interested in Latin America and Guatemala in particular. So in terms of their fundraising, we have many people from within that church, but then all of us have a group of friends that we ask to participate in the fundraising. But of course, we're not the large scale, obviously, by any stretch that Josie's talking about. I'd say we spend about 20 to 25,000 a year. But it does take something to raise that because it's all from individuals who care about those projects.
Well, maybe we'll raise some more money for you next year.
So I'm going to interject two things. One is the participant list on the Zoom says 13. However, I'm seeing several of you with many people in your room. So I'm counting today's 19 people. And then Ida Grace is our president. And if she wants to muffle me, she can. But I would suggest, if in effect any one of us are so called and want to make a contribution, we could, to one of these causes or all three, we could contact the individual and you'll have their name and email in the next e-blast, and you can do so unofficially, officially.
We support all villages,
So I think it's time to wrap
including
up
our own.
the program for today. I'm going to stop the recording. Want to thank everybody. Wonderful presentations. As Susan said, we learned so much about what's going on in other parts of the world besides our own neighborhood of Hyde Park. And thank you all for the time and attention to putting the presentation together and sharing your information with us. So this concludes the drop-in. And if anybody wants to stay online to chat, Laura, are you?